Hello and welcome to your solids geometry lesson that will be on cubes and rectangular prisms. So to review, solid geometry is the geometry of the three-dimensional space, so the kind of space that we live in. It's called three-dimensional or 3D because there are three dimensions: width, depth, and height. Some of the simplest 3D shapes are some of the ones here below. So I'm sure some of you can recognize the prisms, the cubes, the cones, the pyramids, spheres, and so on. So solids have properties such as volume, so think about how much water it can hold. Surface area, think of the area you would need to paint it. Sorry, that should say area. The vertices, faces, and edges that it may have. So there are two main types of solids. So one of them is called polyhedra and non-polyhedra. So polyhedra ones are the ones that must have flat faces. So examples of these are cubes, prisms, and pyramids. The non-polyhedra are when any surface is not flat, and some examples of these are spheres, cones, and cylinder. So for cubes, we're going to start that one, and it is also called a hexahedron because it is a polyhedron with 6 faces. So it has 6 faces, and that's where the hexa name comes in. All of the faces are squares, and it has 12 edges and 8 vertices. We also have rectangular prisms, which are probably the more familiar term you're familiar with. They're also called cuboids. So a rectangular prisms are box-shaped objects. It has 6 flat faces and all angles are right angles. All of the faces are rectangles and they are also called cuboids. So in your homework, this will be the term it uses instead of rectangular prisms. So just remember that. It is a prism because it has identical ends, flat faces, and it's the same cross section all along its length. So you might be asking, what is a cross section? So a cross section is the shape we get when you cut it, when you cut through an object. So if you were to cut through this triangular prism, the cross section of this object is a triangle because if we were to hold the knife out and cut it through the middle, you would still see the face of a triangle and it wouldn't change the shape. So, as we have been working on area for two-dimensional shapes, it's time we introduce the third dimension, which brings us to the volume formula. So cubes and rectangular prisms have a similar formula. So the rectangular prism formula is the length times width times height. And the cube formula is very similar. It would be length times width times height, but as you know, cubes all have the same side. So instead of saying length times width times height, we can just say length times length, or we could just say side times side times size. At the end of the day, it's the length to the power of 3, which is what it represents because it is being multiplied 3 times. So let's do an example. So find the volume of this prism. You find out that the length are 2 centimeters, width is 10 centimeters, height is 6 centimeters. So please pause the slide and show me what you got. Try to do it on your own. Okay, I hope that you have unpaused me and you're not looking ahead. So over here, the steps of it is number 2. You go 2 times 10 times 6. Okay, so mathematically for the numbers, we get 120 centimeters cubed. But some of you might be wondering, how do we get this cube? And I just wrote it out here. I drew it, so I'm sorry if it's not very clear. I put 2 centimeters times 10 centimeters times 6 centimeters. So the same as with area, the 3 represents how many times that unit has been multiplied by itself. Okay, so we have centimeter times centimeter times centimeter for a total of 3 centimeters. Okay? Okay, let's find the volume of this cube. So take a moment and put me on pause. Okay, so it is length to the power of 3. Or it could be side times side times side, and we know all of the sides are 8 centimeters. So when you go 8 times 8 times 8, you get 512. And then when you go centimeter times centimeter times centimeter, you get centimeter cubed. Okay, um, let's carry on. So there's also a way that you can figure out a missing side if you know the volume. So you need at least two pieces of information, whether it be length, width, or height. You will just need two of those, and maybe your question will be find the width of the height from the volume. So you will be able to find the missing side. So I'll give you an example so it's a little bit more clear. So if you know that the volume of a rectangular prism is 48 centimeters cubed and that it has a width of 3 centimeters and it has a length of 2 centimeters, find the height. So let's think about how we can find the height. So what I always do, and what you will be doing in high school, is especially when you are given a formula, it is great for you to get in the habit of writing it at the top. So then that way, when you have all the pieces of information, you can fill them in. So we have volume equals length times width times height. So let's plug in volume. Our volume we know is 48 centimeters cubed equals 2 centimeters, our length, times 3 centimeters, our width, times h, which is our variable. Okay, it helps to pick a variable with the letter of something that it stands for. So I pick h for height. Okay, so we get 48 centimeters is equal to 6 centimeters squared times h. Okay, don't look at this part just yet. Okay, and here you have to figure out, well, I want to isolate my h variable, which is right here. But right now it's currently tied to that 6 centimeters squared. Okay? We have to look at what kind of operation is happening that is keeping them together. Right now we have multiplication. So because we have multiplication, we have to do the opposite of multiplication to get rid of it. So right now we have to divide 6 centimeters squared. So we can isolate h and leave it alone. So once we divide 6 centimeters squared by 6 centimeters, it's gone. It's like 1 times h. So that doesn't matter. But we have to, what we do to one side, we must also do to the other. So now you can see we have 48 centimeters cubed divided by 6 centimeters squared. Okay, so let's just do the numbers first because that's easier. So 48 divided by 6, you get 8. Okay, you might be wondering, well, how do I do the centimeters cubed and the centimeters squared? Okay, because that looks different. So I am just writing it out over here. If you have centimeters cubed, it's also what we have been talking about, centimeter times centimeter times centimeter. And at the bottom, over here, I'm getting the 2, we have 2. Okay, and we want to figure out how many are we left with. So we have one at the top, we can cross off one at the bottom. And then we have one at the top, one at the bottom. But we are left with 1, just 1, which is why our answer is just like that, because there's only 1 left. So you are left with 8 centimeters. So the height of the prism is 8 centimeters. And then you could also be wondering, well, how do I know it's not squared or cubed? So if you think about it, if you're measuring the height of something, you're going in a straight line, which means you're focusing in only one dimension in the line. So that means that if you have a meter stick or whatever you are using to measure, it's not going to be cubed. Okay? Height, width, and length will always be on its own unit. Okay? Going back to the answer, another great way to check if you got the right answer is you can check by using the formula. So let's go to it. So let's use the formula so we know volume equals length times width times height. So we have 3 centimeters times 2 centimeters times our 8 centimeters that we just found out and we were plugging in. And once you multiply those all together, you get 48. When you go 3 times 2 times 8, you get 48. And when you go centimeter times centimeter times centimeter, you get the centimeter cubed. So we know it is correct because we know that is what the volume of our shape is. So we know we did good. Okay, now it's time for you to do your homework. And as always, please let me know if you have any questions or if there's a way that I can help or support you. Thanks.